This land is your land, and this land is my land.
A police-protected white riot that took place in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
The African-American community in Tulsa was relatively prosperous, well-educated. I mean, they had done everything that they were supposed to do in terms of the American dream. This created such seething resentment in Tulsa. That resentment was so intense and that it was just waiting for a spark to just ignite it.
Despite the prevailing racism of the time, the black citizens of Tulsa had made a pretty good life for themselves shortly after World War I. But on the night of May 31, 1921, racial violence destroyed everything they had. It all started with the arrest of a black teenager named Dick Rowland.
And he gets in the elevator, and there's a white woman in the elevator. I believe she was the elevator operator. She yelled, "Rape."
That afternoon, the Tribune, the Tulsa Tribune, which was a local paper at that time, came out with the article about what happened, and then said at the end, looked like there's going to be a lynching in Tulsa tonight.
That evening, several thousand whites gathered outside the courthouse where Rowland was being held.
As soon as the lynch mob began to gather downtown around the courthouse, a group of black men, many of them World War I veterans, gathered themselves into cars and guns and went downtown to stop this thing. A white man tried to disarm a black vet. A struggle ensued and a shot went off, and at that point the race riot was on.
And the violence began. The lynch mob rode in, but they also came in airplanes, dropping bombs on Tulsa, black Tulsa.
You could see the smoke and the fire, and you could hear the guns shooting. I said to my mother, I said, "Mama," I said, "we better get out of here, because I said, they're burning the place down, they're shooting one another," and I said, "they're gonna kill us."
Whites took their furniture, took their clothes, took various other personal possessions, then they burned and bombed the black part of town.
The black people defending their homes were described as the enemy. Gun-toting white men were referred to as riflemen or soldiers, and blacks were termed snipers.
And they came over here and burned our homes, stole our clothes. Some of our people had to take their own clothes off of white people.
Descriptions and depictions of African Americans being decapitated, being forced to kneel down.
Oh, it was like a nightmare. Everything was in flames.
Disarmed by Tulsa's white police force, black citizens were unable to defend themselves. The authorities detained about 60 white rioters, but none of them were ever charged. 6,000 blacks, meanwhile, were marched off to internment centers while their beloved Greenwood burned to the ground.
There wasn't a building standing. When we went to where we lived, knew where it was, but there wasn't anything around in any room but ashes.
There are pictures of the strafings, of the bombings, of the shootings. Nobody's quite sure what the death toll is.
In a single day, black Tulsa was reduced to rubble. All told, 35 blocks were destroyed, scores of people were dead, and more than 5,000 blacks were left homeless.
To wake up and see nothing but ashes and buildings burnt to the ground, charred.
What you see is an area that had once been thriving, absolutely leveled by the violence, by the lynch mobs, by the airplanes, by the bombs, leveled. As the bombings are happening, as the violence is happening, as Tulsa is on fire, the governor of Oklahoma is like, whoa, nothing we can do here. And that is so indicative of the imbalance that has happened in terms of justice, in terms of rights, in terms of the protection of basic civil and human rights.
Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me. When the sun comes shining, then I was strolling, and the wheat fields waving, the dust clouds rolling, the voice coming chanting, and the fog was lifting. This land was made for you and me.